So what do you think about the police brutality and the Black Lives Matters movement today?
I'll start with responding to the first question. Uh, yes, police brutality does exist in America. There is uh, a difference in how policemen react to African Americans than they do it with white Americans.
Sure.
Okay, uh, there is a difference how police react to young people as opposed to older people, and
All the colored people.
well, even older colored people,
Yeah.
older black people. Um, but at the same time, there's a difference how they react to older black people and older white people.
Sure.
Okay, and there is a difference in how they react to in all African American neighborhoods
Sure.
and all white neighborhoods.
Sure.
But I have to also state that they should be, and many are our protectors. We should look toward them as our protectors.
Sure.
And we don't want to indict all policemen because we have a few bad apples on the force. But I have to recognize that because of the culture of certain forces,
Sure.
there is I'm talking about police departments.
Sure.
There is there are some rogue department and some good departments.
Sure.
And it has a lot to do with the leadership.
I have read online that in some states, people just think that the Ku Klux Klan had left the white dress to just go into the police to commit murders.
Mm-hmm.
What do you think about that?
But, you restate that. I didn't hear all that. I didn't hear all of it.
In certain states in the U.S.,
Mm-hmm.
some people, I read that online, that some people just think that it's the Ku Klux Klan that got involved in the police and then just running their own activities legally.
Yes, that is true.
Not nationwide, but in certain states.
No, but what I have found that what occurs nationwide generally can be found all over the country.
Okay.
And the reason I say that is that we had a complaint here
Mm-hmm.
of a policeman harassing a black person.
Yeah.
And during the process of our investigation of people who lived near and around that policeman,
Sure.
led us to believe that he had those inclinations.
Sure.
And so the benefit of having a long history of the NAACP and also moving across the country and across the state,
Right.
I have a good feel of what is happening across America. And my general feeling, although in the numbers we may not have it here, but the general feeling of the general population in many areas you're going to find here.
Okay.
You have, now even where I grew up, we couldn't have survived if there hadn't not been good white people.
Sure.
But at the same time, there were bad people.
It was black people
Okay.
too. So what do you think about the Black Lives Movement, the way they protest, going hands up, and also the way that the organization is built up is that there are various grassroots community leaders. They're not a structure like a normal organization, like a pyramid. How do you think of this new way of activism in America, responding to police brutality?
Well, I'm part of a different generation that
Sure.
have developed my thoughts on how you interact socially and interact with the broader society.
Yeah.
But I'm not so locked into it that there may be other ways of effectively doing it.
Sure.
But it's one thing that they have done is they have made very clear, and to the American people, that police brutality has to stop.
Sure.
And by coming up with the slogan, Black Lives Matters, and it's a movement that has some consequence.
That's right.
In America today.
Right.
And as long as they can, just like the NAACP, we've had 100 years to refine our organization.
Sure.
And they've had only, what, a few years,
Just a
and
few years,
who's
yeah.
to say how that they may develop it, and how
That's
and
right.
how effective it'll be in the future.
I think the idea is that when a normal organization is structured,
Mhm.
they can decapitate the leaders. But if there's so many leaders all over the country in a very horizontal way, it's going to be difficult to defeat them. So I think this is just we'll see a new way of solving, racism in America that Black Lives Matters does.
Right.
Yeah.
But you have to remember that the NAACP is really structured that way.
Okay.
The local unit has complete authority
Sure.
within it. So nobody from the top tells us what we can do,
Mhm.
and other than the basic policy
That's
that
right.
we all establish.
Sure.
And as long as you operate within the basic policy, you implement it as you see fit, both
Okay.
at the local level, state level, and even at the national level.
Mhm.
And if you want to change that, then you've got to change the Constitution.
Yeah.
Okay.
I would like to know who in your life has inspired you the most.
Well, I would have to say,
There can be more than one.
well, yeah, of course, my parents had, my father had a lot to do with that. And,
Sure.
the,
So you are following his path.
uh,
You are following your father's path.
well, it's his guidance, his core values,
Sure.
and my ancestors impacted him,
Sure.
which impacted me.
Sure.
And of course, you would think my father would have probably the most influence, but outside of that, some of the local people here,
Yeah.
older ones,
Yeah.
and one is the Mr. Hobart Boyer.
Sure.
He was a pioneer of the local NAACP. There
Right.
was, and among others, that was struggling to maintain a charter here in the NAACP when we came here.
Sure.
And well, it was here in 1962,
That's
but
right.
I decided I only became a member in 1968.
What inspired me to ask you the question, because I feel like, you could be this guy who wants to get just a regular job at White Sign and not get involved with how black people struggle in America. But you decided to just get involved for 50 years.
Yeah, right. Well, if you're gonna
How big were the check that you get from your involvement in this organization?
What's that?
Did you get paid?
No,
They were
no,
just 50
no.
years of volunteering work,
No,
right?
I've never been paid.
Okay, so congratulations. So why did you get involved in that? Somebody might inspire you. That's why.
Well, that's why, and it's now you remember I came from a segregated community.
Sure.
That inspired me, and I found a vehicle through which I could work.
Okay.
But prior to that time, I was, and I knew it was there,
Mm-hmm.
and I could tell you some of my ancestors, the stories they passed down.
Sure.
Within the at night around the fireplace,
Sure.
the inequities
Mhm.
and all of that. You know what my father told me? He told me that some of the things and restrictions that he imposed upon me living in the South.
Right.
But you know what he told me? I'm raising you to not be tarred and feathered.
Wow. That's deep for a child.
Well, I'm just telling you what African American men people of that day told their children. They raised them to survive in that society.
So what would you advise, what advice would you have for the next generation of community leaders carrying out this struggle forward? What advice do you have for them?
Work for the total good of our communities, to make them a better place to live, work, and play for everyone,
Sure.
regardless of race, creed, and color.
That's what you had for the next generation.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Anything you would like to add in this conversation? Because we have arrived in the term of our discussion. You have anything you wanted to add in this conversation? Anybody you want to thank?
Well, we must be mindful of our history and of our community and of America.
Sure.
History has a, if we're not familiar with our history, we are more prone to repeat the history.
Sure.
And not be prepared to deal with it when we faced with similar situations. And we're going to have to make sure that the future leaders are knowledgeable of our history.
Sure.
We even hear in some of the popular thought today, people are even questioning whether we were voluntarily or involuntarily enslaved.
Sure.
And our history, if you know your history, you would vehemently disagree with that.
That's right.
And so our leaders need to be familiar, future leaders need to be familiar with our history, because history just has a habit of repeating itself.
That's right.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. I'd like to invite Katie Jenkins into the conversation because she's the one of the member of your organization.
Okay.
And I'd like to acknowledge her contribution into this conversation because she's the one who researched and make the connection so we can have this conversation possible.
Okay.
So welcome.
Thank you.
Yeah. Anything you want to add in the conversation?
I guess I just want to say that one experience that I've had with Mr. Rucks is for the state conference last year. I remember that he nominated me to be a delegate to the conference, and I remember that he told me, I'm giving this opportunity to you. Do you want to take it or not? And I said, I definitely want to take it.
Sure.
I definitely want this opportunity. So I appreciate his leadership. I appreciate his mentorship so far with regards to my involvement with the NAACP.
Okay. So we will not actually have this conversation possible without the input of Katie Jenkins, which is also a secretary of
Assistant Secretary
of the NAACP Las Cruses Branch.
Right, yes. And she's a real asset to the executive committee of the local branch.
Yeah. So I would like to thank you both for your hospitality, and then I am very glad that I didn't make this trip for nothing.
Okay.
Because my passion is people, and I like the history of people. I think people are like museums or libraries. You know, you have to read them, and the way they open themselves to you enrich your soul. And then that's have been my personal journey throughout the human society. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Okay.
And then we had this video conversation with your permission, right?
Yes.
Okay. So we send you the copy for the review.
Okay.
Thank you very much.
All right.
Okay. Any last words? Okay, I'm gonna stop the video. Okay.
Okay.
You guys just smile because it's in your state. So we're going to end the video now. 1, 2, 3.